Hi everyone, welcome to my Shoreline Studio. I'm Sybille Muschik. Behind the camera is Joshua Blanc. Today we're looking at color swatches. Now I know they are maybe considered tedious by some people, but they are very critical to learning about color. And there's various ways of creating them. You can do little squares, all sorts of pages of different combinations like analogous colors or complementary colors, and your tones and your tints. And tones are when you add black to a color, and tints are when you add white. So, but it doesn't really have to be such a chore. You can do it in an artistic way and enjoy the process, and maybe you'll remember the combinations better. So I've been playing for a while just with my round gel plate. Circles are always a lot of fun. And we're going to try out my new Distress Oxides. I only got basic colors. They're not exactly inexpensive. Good old Michael's, yeah. Anyway, usually when we work with colors, we do, use a color wheel, and you can see all the different aspects of it, and you can see on the back the, harmonious colors and, how you start. But, this is great, but you're just looking at something. Until you have a hands-on feel for how the colors work together by actually doing it, you won't learn and you won't remember. So let's get rid of that and start with our little gel plate. This is, I think, a 3-inch. Now I also have some tools. We're going to make it interesting, we're going to mess around with a few things, which is typical of us. Anyway, so let's start with white, just to see the color. Now I like to use a little roller for this, just to get the color onto the roller. This is actually an ink pad with a water-soluble ink infused. And then you just roll it onto your... Now, being water-soluble, you will have to make sure you put it under glass and matte and so forth, which is expensive, that you use matte medium or any medium to make it permanent. Then you don't have to worry about that kind of thing. So let's just do a basic run through on white. Just to see the intensity of the color. No, I haven't even made any marks on there. And as you can see, it's a fairly intense color on white. Let's just give it a little bit more. We won't clean it off. And see if it intensifies the color. And I also got some tools, but they're too soft for this kind of purpose, so we'll use some of my older tools and to see if the marks will show up. And I seriously doubt it. It just sort of smears. Now if you put some water in there and did it that way, let's just give ourselves a little water and you'll see the difference. Now, it doesn't need much. And then we'll see the contrast wherever the marks are. If we remove the paint, then the white will show through. And you'll see how it reacts with that particular, well, you can't say white as a color exactly, but okay, so that's kind of interesting. You can see how it affects the yellow with the white showing through. It's not really a contrast yet. That's when we get into the deeper colors. It doesn't have to be so regular. You can do, you know, crazy stuff, and that's what we'll do next. You do have to clean your little brayer. Probably handy if you had the same size to use two. But I only have one of these brayers. I've got bigger ones and smaller ones. You just don't want to contaminate your little distress oxide pads here. So roll it out. And then you can roll right over the yellow you had on there. Okay, now what does that do to the color? And to ascertain that, you put one over top of the other. And we'll see if we get that secondary color. Right. And we do. Okay, so we get a deeper tint of that. And you see a little bit of the red coming through here. So, you know, it's an interesting contrast here. So, you know, those are very workable colors, and they are analogous. Okay, so clean that off. We'll try the blue and clean your plate too in this case. Just a quick wipe, because these are very easy to clean. So we'll start with the blue, and we'll roll that out. You can have your circles going every which way and make it interesting. I'm just keeping it simple for everybody that's viewing this. So a nice intense blue. And we won't bother with marks here, so. And maybe we'll put it fairly close so that you can see the contrast. So the color is pretty intense, as you see. And what we're going to do is we'll clean our brayer, but not the plate, and then roll it off. Even though you've cleaned it, it might not be perfect, so roll it off on that sheet of paper just to make sure there's no color left, so you don't contaminate your little block. Your edges too might hold colors, so make sure you clean those as well. So yellow and blue make green, right? That's our basic childhood memory. Well, let's give that some proof. Okay. We have a nice intense blue. It's more of a phthalo blue. And print that again by overlapping. We'll just do the same thing. Right, and then we have a nice spring green. And also we have this as a yellow green, because we've added yellow and blue together. Now let's just use that same thing. Let's see how intense these colors are. We would just print. I'm going to Add a little bit of water to my little marker here. Stylus, whatever you want to call it. I was just watching a program on snakes, and I'm just amazed at the color combinations they have and patterns. If you ever want to learn more about patterns, study snakes. And you don't have to handle them, you just have to, look at them. Well, some people handle snakes, but anyway, they're a fascinating creature. Okay, let's see what happens now. Now we could overlap this so we get, so this experimentation is what's so interesting and why you'll remember your color swatches better. Hands-on is always the best. And of course you can make side notes. So we have some interesting marks. So white doesn't really come through, but now we have a good gradation of tones here, several. And that's all we've done. So if you're painting in acrylic, for example, and you want this kind of effect, keep these little color swatches. I mean, it doesn't have to be this big. I'm doing this for the sake of the video. They could be half the size, and then you can enter it in your journal, and then you can flip into it, and circles are far more interesting to look at. So that was quite interesting. Okay, so let's put that aside. Now let's try it on different colored papers. Here's the one that I showed you earlier, and it takes down the intensity because our color is sort of a pale grayish beige. So this is what happens, but look at the intensity of the red. And then this one is with the blue, and I put some charcoal around it just to create the edges that we need. And then it started looking a little bit like cylinders. And I thought, well, that's interesting. So, it could spin off into all sorts of fun things for you. Anything to enhance your memory of it. Okay, back to cleaning. Now at home, you can run through all the colors you have. Not just your basics, but the basics are a good way to start. Right, okay, so we're going to just start with the yellow again. And these distress oxides are reasonably intense, as you've noticed. Don't forget to fix them. And maybe bring in some other tools to just see what happens when you do that. Right. Okay, we'll see how much the color changes as a result of being on a more muted low-key yellow. Do we lose the intensity? Does it stay just as bright? Does it alter the color considerably? These are all questions you can ask yourself. Okay, so we've lost a little of the intensity. Here's a comparison. Okay, so let's, if you do something like this, and there's a bit of water in there, that's okay. And a little bit more color. And you can go, do this kind of thing. Make it fun. It's like an animation in a way. You could maybe rub it on directly. Yep. So you learn all sorts of stuff when you do a hands-on thing and you're not just looking at samples. So those are the kind of fun things to do. Okay, now do one. And let's see how intense we can get this color. So experiments are all about trying stuff. You know, what if you did this and what if you did that? And that keeps us focused. Let's maybe overlap that a bit. And just stop turning and printing. Okay. Now, have we upped the intensity where it overlaps or just darkened the color? I guess time will tell. So the next one, we have to clean our brayer. Okay, now we're on to our red. What is this one called? Anyway, there's Worn Lipstick. Okay. When I'm doing colors, I prefer to have the proper names. That way I know what I'm dealing with in terms of the pigment that they've put in there. Now, we've got to leave that because we don't want to contaminate anything. So let's do our overlapping. And we have a nice yellow orange here and more of a reddish orange there. And then if we just continue on with the, we should get a nice red at the end. We'll just clean everything off. With the plate you don't have to be so particular, but with the roller you do. So now the red. So now you've learned about progression, how one color affects another in the light analogous. And analogous just means that their colors are close to the color on the color wheel, just neighbors to each other. And that includes, you know, your blues and greens and so forth, where they are on the color wheel. It's not just the light colors. Okay, so here we are. Now, I wonder if we can get just a touch of that other one. So you have yellow orange there and more of the red orange in here. So if you're doing, say, a fall scene, then you know that you can use any of these colors to depict the leaves. Let's try our little container here with the red. We'll make sure there's no water in it this time, just to spice it up a little bit. And then we'll just do what we did on the beginning. Or we could even go all the way across. So you would do that with any number of different containers. It doesn't have to be in circle like today. So you can do the center here. Let's see if it shows up. It's hard to see, but you'll see it later. And I guess you could continue circles and so forth. You can play with it forever, right? So, and that's fun. And like I said, if you use a smaller scale, you can mount it in your journal, and you'll see, you know, these beautiful luminous color combinations that you might not have thought of, you know, in your usual compositions. Right, now we're going to get to the dark side. Again, we'll clean. And when you're cleaning, maybe don't waste that layer, print it onto something. Now here's, and I just want to show you, this is called simultaneous contrast. Now if you look at this, it seems to tone down the blue. Look at how bright this is. As soon as you put that on, it takes it down a step. And it's a huge, huge contrast suddenly. So even if you have really bright colors, this is one way of dealing with it. Okay, starting again. Let's just use our red. We're going to get into a discordant color. And I'm going to cover it, but then we're going to spray it with a bit of water. Just spritz tiny bit. And a little bit more. We're going to have up the intensity here because these are not quite so strong in intensity compared to this blue, which is very intense. So then you have to really work with it. And let's see if we can make some more circles on here and see if that shows up. Now blue and pink are discordant colors. In other words, they sort of fight each other. Matisse loved discordant colors. He often put yellow and orange together, blue and pink and so forth. And that sort of gives you this amazing vibration. So something to look up and study. Now let's see if our marks allow the blue to come through. Okay. Now isn't that beautiful? So what happens to the blue? Let's just maybe take that down a swatch. Maybe just with the white here. What happens? Right? Look at how intense the blue is here. And the pink has really gone, it's almost a tertiary color, as if you've added, you know, yellow to that, and it just takes it down considerably. All right. What other things can we do? I'm just going to add a little bit of that water back in there. And we'll do our little snakeskin things again. And lifting things off is a bit of a challenge. All right. And just compare tools here. And this will just make a mark and see if that works. So it works if you're wetting the tool. But it does alter your paper because it is wet, so you have to wait for it to dry. And we'll just maybe do the opposite here, just to be different. All right. So the centerpiece, we're just going to do several runs of the pink to see if we can get it really up in intensity. We've got two low key ones because the blue affects the color. I haven't wet this one. We'll just put this in the middle. By the way, this is Canson My Taint paper, so it's almost like a pastel paper. In graphic design, we used it as a background for a construction of, client pieces. So that's about the intensity you get, just with this blue background and how it affects it. It really takes it down several steps. I guess we'll leave this one, and then I like it the way it is. So we have our last one. All right, so let's go to the green. I'm going to leave the red on the our little gel plate. And we should have a tertiary color as a result. And it will take down the color considerably, so it will be a neutral. So how do we get neutrals? We practice and we experiment. Generally, it's opposites, right? But sometimes you can get neutrals in other ways. Yeah, let's just do it plain. Neutrals are vital to compositions because they make the pure colors shine and radiate. Otherwise, it's all the same key, and that. So this one's actually quite nice. It has quite a lot of intensity compared to the lipstick, whatever the heck it was called. Let's do that some more, and we'll see how high we can get it. And we will muck around with it, and maybe I'll do several circles. Now this is a very cool green, more on the phthalo range, so it has a lot of blue in it already. The paint does smear a little bit when you're working with it, so that's either a good thing or a bad thing. If you're a high realist, then that could be a bad thing, and you'll have to really work at having clean lines. But for those of us who are sort of semi-abstract anyway, or totally abstract, it's really quite interesting. I'll do some lines. Some radiating lines. Now, I'm not saying you can't do, use brushes that Brush marks could be really interesting, but these are just the tools I've chosen for today. And let's do that on the opposite end. There we go. I'm using my Baron because you really need a good deal of pressure. Now, how does this change the colors? We've upped the intensity a little bit, and it's more intense as a result of the darker blue shining through. Now, isn't that a strange effect and so interesting? Again, that's what do you call that simultaneous contrast, where one vibrates next to another. So it's a good skill to use. Okay, now run a little bit more over that. So just using different background papers instead of painting, you know, the print to begin with, you know, doing that first base layer, which we often do. Just using a different color paper, and especially an intense paper like this and the other ones that we've used, will give you an entirely different effect. I'm just going to spritz. See what happens when we play with water. You remember as a kid, you know, puddling around in little wash basins, and well, we're back at it. Yeah, you get such neat effects. Yep. We can control it to some degree. All right. We're just going to damp it off ever so slightly. You won't lose all that nice quality that we got from the paint running, but it does control the drips a little bit. Okay, let's try that. Okay, we lost a little bit of the pattern. It does have to dry. We've got some of the drips showing up, and you can control that as well. Let's try that a slightly different way. We'll do this. I'm going to spray it over my garbage can from a distance, so not quite so much water. And then damp it off slightly. Okay. And we'll double print this one and see what transpires. Maybe nothing, maybe something really fantastic. You don't know until you try stuff. Now we probably have to wait for it to dry, but you can see as it dried, there must be a little bit of chalk in the paint because it does seem to separate out. Okay, we're going to overprint with some blue. So we should get a nice blue-green. I wasn't too worried about the blue that was or green that was underneath contaminating my plate because most of it had been printed. So I was thinking about my General's Sketch and Wash. Now, I don't know if this is, oh yes, it might work. And give it some interest. Now, I don't know if it'll pick up the black at all. But it's a good marking tool anyway. And it's getting carried away with whatever this is, so. No, we sort of lost all the patterns, so we might as well just print it with something interesting. Now we'll see how that alters the green. Okay, so we get a nice turquoise bluey green, and we're getting the, even right down to that bluish purple paper. So you could carry on forever with this kind of experiment. So here is a nice range of tones, from green to slightly blue-green, and then, because I think there's blue in that Distress Oxide color. It's called Lucky Clover, but I'm sure it's on the blue side. So adding a little bit of more blue, we just get that total range. If we added yellow, then it would start going towards a warmer color. So anyway, we've got some nice textures. We've got some good contrasts. So there you go. And we've learned a lot about color mixing. And we had fun with these color swatches, which is, helpful if you're, sitting down and you need to work out color swatches, say for a painting. You might as well have some fun with it, and you'll remember the combinations much more easily. So give it a shot. As usual, take care of yourselves and your families in these terrible times. Be kind to one another. Bye for now.